I remember turning up to give talks at universities where 0 people showed up, and I would practice my speech to 4 walls.
We're all about turning a crappy situation into something positive.
$250,000 of credit
I
card debt.
still remember the day when no one turned up.
Throw it in the garbage and start from scratch.
I could give myself a chance, so I started something.
I mean, I think that counts as from poop to gold.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of From Poop to Gold. I am your host, Daniel Harmon, with my co-host, Benton Crane. And we have today 2 special guests with us, Shetty and Alex Kushneir from Ikon Media. 4 billion views, 25 million followers, and then now the #1 health podcast on iTunes, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Called On Purpose.
Yes, that's it.
That's awesome.
So you guys co-founded Ikon Media.
Yes.
And if I understand correctly, you are very focused on a specific purpose. Talk to us about that purpose.
Yeah, so I think the big thing that happened first of all, and I just want to track back a tiny little, was around why Ikon Media began. And it was because a lot of people were approaching me, friends, influencers, authors, experts, and saying, Jay, we really connect with your content. We like the way you're telling stories. How can you do that for us? Like, how do we do that? And so it started off as me just giving tips to friends on a phone call or email or giving advice. And then the first video that I actually helped a friend with went super viral. So we did it for my good friend, Gabby Bernstein. And Gabby had this book coming out called Judgment Detox. And I helped Gabby with that video. And that video has like 10 million views or something. And I think it was really successful for her. And the next thing you know, she was telling everyone that, hey, Jay really knows what he's talking about. He can do it for you too as well. It's not just for himself. And so that was really, really kind of Gabby to share that. And then when that happened, so many people were interested. I was like, I can't do this on my own. And then I reached out to Alex again, who was...
We met at Huffington Post.
Absolutely. We met at HuffPost about 2 years ago. And the reason why I reached out to Alex is that he was a pro in telling the stories of entrepreneurs, environmentalists, activists, CEOs at HuffPost. And he would make those videos go regularly viral on HuffPost. And he has a really strong production background. And that's what I was looking for. So I was coming more from a storytelling point of view and a production. And in line with your question, our goal was my mission in life is making wisdom go viral. And so when I look at that broader, one thing me and Alex share in common is that we want positive, powerful, uplifting content to win on social media. We don't want social media to be a place of negativity, to be a place of depression, to be a place of anxiety and stress.
Right.
So for me, when we can partner up and work with authors, influencers, brand companies to do that, then we feel very aligned. So now it's not just my videos. Alex and I are able to work with brands, companies, and organizations. And the big thing I'd add before we hand over to Alex for that is, for me, a few years ago, every company was saying, you need to be a media company. And today, my biggest push to all companies is everyone needs to be a wellness company. Like, there's no excuse now to not think about the wellness of your own self, the wellness of your team, the wellness of your customer, your client, your partner, whatever you call it. Every company needs to be a wellness company. And so we want to work with every wellness company in the world. In my opinion, that's every company needs to do that.
How do you help bridge that gap, or when do you decide they're just not the right fit?
Yeah, I think that happens, we go right into a research and development mode, and we really do our homework and look at the person, look at the individual, look at the brand, what they stand for, what kind of content they've created in the past, interviews they've done, podcasts they've done, and really analyzing all that information and see where they align. Do they align with our core values? And if they don't, they don't. And, we kind of say, sorry, but, I don't think you align with our culture, or we just move on and they go somewhere else. So that's like kind of the basic breakdown of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our big thing has been whenever anyone's approached us, it's really looking at how that company wants to rebrand or redefine who they are. And so as long as they're open to redefining who they are, then that's awesome. And we've been very fortunate. I genuinely feel there are a lot more companies out there in the world and a lot more brands that are doing good in the world already. So I actually don't think it's that far off. I don't actually notice a big distance. The people that we meet, the companies we work with, the brands that we work with, they want to do good in the world or already are. They just don't know how to tell those stories. Mm-hmm. So what they're actually doing is they're either like saying, oh, we achieved this year without telling that story behind it. Mm-hmm. Or like, oh, we raised this much in charity this year without telling the story behind it. So for me, actually, most brands are doing amazing things.
Yeah.
And for us, it's our job to help them tell those stories better.
Well, let me dive just a little bit deeper into your kind of personal origin story, because I think it's extremely fascinating. And before you and Alex jumped together to do Ikon Media and stuff, you have even more backstory. Do you mind jumping into that a little bit? Kind of like the life path you took?
Yeah, sure. So born and raised in London, was a really obedient kid until the age of 13. 14 to 18 went the opposite way, delved in everything from drugs to violence to petty crime, just spending time with the wrong circles. I'm like not a mean, aggressive person at all. Just ended up spending time in completely the wrong circles and environments. Aged 18, I met a monk that completely switched the trajectory of my life because I got fascinated with spirituality, wisdom, and timeless thought. And so 18 to 22, I used to spend a lot of summer holidays experimenting with life as a monk and also experimenting with life as a 18 to 22-year-old. And then at age 22, I decided to leave everything and go and become a monk. So I turned down my corporate job offers and went and lived as a monk in India for 3 years and built sustainable villages and food distribution programs and studied ancient texts and books that I really wanted to teach. So I would go out and speak at companies and events and at schools and to people from the village and everywhere that I could, just sharing insights into self-care, self-awareness, well-being. So that's kind of like a very quick version of that time. But yeah, something that's really stayed with everything I do right now. Like everything I do today has come from that. When I started making content, it was never to build a brand. It was never to build a business. It was just to make an impact. And the fact that it's now evolved is beautiful. But I always remind myself of that's why I started, and that's where I want to end as well.
Is there, for someone that doesn't want to go and become a monk, how you can apply meditation to making yourself just more successful? What do you kind of get where I'm going? with this question?
Sure. It's a great question. I think one of my favorite ones, really simple, I recommend everyone to test it straight after listening to this show, is something called single tasking. Do one thing at a time. That's mindfulness, that's meditation. If you're eating, just eat. If you're drinking water, just drink water. If you're having a conversation, just have a conversation. The challenge is we're constantly not where we are. So when we're eating, we're watching a movie. When we're drinking water, we're thinking about something else. So our mind is never where we are, which means there's a constant disconnect between our body and our mind, which means there's stress. Anywhere there's a gap like that, there's stress, there's pressure, there's tension. So we want to bring our mind and our body back into alignment by being mentally present and mindfully present where we're physically present. And so you can achieve that simply just by what I call single tasking. Just do one thing at a time. And so we have this perspective right now in life that we can all be multitaskers. And I think the truth is only 2% of the population in the world can actually biologically multitask. And when everyone hears that stat, they're like, oh yeah, that's me. It's probably, right? It's probably...
Right. You're rolling the wrong dice
yeah,
there,
it's
buddy.
probably not, right? Like it's like 2%. So multitasking is this myth that we were trained in to believe that you could do lots of things at the same time. Studies show that most of us can only do one thing well. And so when we're not single tasking, we're actually reducing our productivity, our creativity, and our effectivity.
I've never really thought of it in terms of that, just being with that thing in that moment, that can actually be a form of meditation.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
That.
Yeah. Even if it's as boring as washing dishes. Like you just do that properly, you do it quicker, like whatever it is.
Tell us about a situation where you took a really crappy situation and turned it into something great.
Yeah, this is a great one. So in 2017, I'd had 100 million views, but I was 4 months away from being broke. So that's only like 1.5 years ago, or maybe just over 2 years, nearly 2 years ago. And I was in that position because the brand that I was making content for didn't align with where I wanted to be anymore. They wanted me to be more political. And I didn't want to be political. My message has never been political. So I had to leave a very steady, good salary and all the rest of it. And I was living in New York and I had 4 months left before I had nothing left. And I just got married a year before that. So I was also thinking about my wife and my wife was thinking about me and we're trying to figure it all out. And I remember I came back and that was like a day that I remember my monk training like kicking in so big time. I came home and I obviously told my wife that like we had enough money for 4 months and I was going to figure it out. And I remember saying to her, I said 3 things to her. The first thing I said to her was, don't judge the moment. And that was a big message we learned as monks, that you never judge the moment because a moment can make you feel like it's the worst moment of your life, but then you're making it the worst moment of your life. Or it could be the best moment of your life if you don't judge it. So that was step 1. Step 2, I was like, this makes the story better. I was like, one day I'm going to get to tell this story and it's going to make my story sound so much better because when you've been so low, like from poop to gold, right? Like that's it. Like, that was poop and now we're at gold and it makes it more relatable and it makes it real. Like all of us have messed up and had moments where things didn't go to plan or our plan at least. And we could get into that. And then the third thing I said to myself was like, I'm going to use all this energy to build a life doing what I love and making money doing what I love. And I remember the next day waking up and messaging every person I possibly knew about how I could serve them and how my work could maybe help them. And now, you know, one and a half years on, I have now 4 multi-million-dollar businesses that are doing incredibly well. I get to do what I love every day. I have an amazing team. I work with amazing people. And literally like a year and a half ago, I was 4 months away from having nothing. And so for me, that was a big personal kind of revelation that changed my life, because I'd never been in that position before. I'd never had a lot growing up, but I'd never been like, that's it. You know, it's all over. And like, I didn't want to go back, and like my parents aren't well off, so I couldn't just go back and be like, oh, mom and dad, can you help me out? So for me, that was a huge moment where I was really tested, and it's easy to talk about it now, but at that time I was scared. It felt like a failure. I was nervous. I felt everything that you feel, but don't judge the moment. Know that it makes the story better, and then use all that nervous energy to create instead of feeling nervous, and so much good can come from it.
Yeah, and then a lot of the individuals we work with, like, they've all failed. Like, everybody's failed, and some people failed huge, failed big, and then they go on to be successful because that's how you learn.
That's right.
And yeah, it's a common theme.
Absolutely.
That's why we landed on the theme of this podcast, because we knew we'd be
equals gold.
Exactly. It's literally the same story for everybody, right?
And I think you go from gold to poop if you forget about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And I think that's the big thing, that if you
Yes.
forget about it and you forget about what got you here, then you just go backwards. And you see that happen all the time, like ego, complacency. It just takes you back.
Yep.
Right? You're now egotistic. Oh, I've done so much. I've achieved so much. Like, and then you're like ready to fall again.
Well, you mentioned taking that energy and putting it into creation, which I love. So let's talk a little bit about creative process for you. So what are 3 things that you guys do? What are maybe 3 strategies you'd say to stick by if you're going to grow a following on Facebook, maybe specifically with Watch like you have?
Yeah. Why don't you start with some of our clients for Facebook, and then I'll do me.
Yeah, so what we do is we really look at the individual we're going to work with or the brand, and look at the style and the format of the video. Because, Jay, you talked about earlier, it's like not everybody is great directed to camera, like telling a really powerful message or a story. You know, they're just not everyone's good at that. So you got to think of like other formats and styles for that person, whether they're, you know, the style on stage, doing a keynote, like some people are really powerful on stage, like you and other people, but delivering that style, or if it's an interview style where they're more comfortable just talking to a producer off camera, the producer being off camera, me asking the questions, or hiring, you know, an actor or something like that to create recreation videos. So that's just something we use. We use that, you know, style and format going along for like each video. And then we go to the writing phase and kind of like the whole story theming of, you know, what's the message? How do you want people to feel when they watch your video? That's a hard question for a lot of people. Right? It's like, how do you want them to feel? It's like, oh, I don't know.
Most people just come to us because they're like, we just want them to laugh, and so
Exactly.
It's common language, right?
Yeah,
but it makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great advice. I think that's the first one. Just cementing what Alex was saying around where is that person going to shine, or where is that brand going to shine? And I always thought about this, like, you know, when people are saying be authentic, and then some people are like, well, we're a dull brand. Does that mean we be authentically dull? Like, what does that mean? Right? Like, and so it's like, it's figuring out where does that brand, that company, that individual, where are they going to be at their best? And I think a lot of people don't even know. And so a lot of people are trying to imitate or emulate. So I always give the example of Gary Vee, for example. So a lot of people started trying to do what Gary does. And the reason, and Gary's a friend, so, you know, and why it doesn't work is because Gary's on fire when he's in that environment, right? He's on fire in that environment. And so if you go, oh yeah, I want to do that video because I think it will go viral, it doesn't actually make sense because you may not be on fire in that environment. So that's step one. The second thing is that what Alex was saying around the 5 areas. So there's 5 areas that go viral through studies: adventure, comedy, emotion, inspiration, or surprise. From 7,000 pieces of research, those were the top 5. And realize those are not genres, they're feelings. And
they're emotions.
Emotions. So it's like, how does someone feel after they watch the video? How much have they moved emotionally? And so for us, that's a big part of the creative process, is like, I want someone to feel something after a video. I don't want someone to think or learn something after a video. And that's how most creators, most brands are thinking, like, I want my audience to know this. So you're thinking about knowing, you're not talking about feeling. And the best ads, the best companies, the best brands, the best videos are all videos that make us feel something.
Right.
And so that's a big thing for us. And then the third and final one for us is making sure that we're able to connect that person, right, with a understanding of who else is going to be able to scale that up for them. So one of our clients has a lot of celebrity followers. We're making sure that they're able to connect with all of them, making sure that they built that relationship to be supported by that.
A distribution strategy.
A distribution strategy,
Right.
absolutely. And so we want to make sure that every one of our companies, brands, or people that we're working with have a distribution strategy, and we help them build that.
Yeah, and then I was just picking off like some brands that are selling a product, right? It's like our product's boring. It's like, okay, but your product's like healing people. There's a lot of personal stories where your product's being used to help heal people. Well, those are super emotional, powerful stories to tell. And that's what we're going to do. And they're like,
change
oh, okay,
lives.
that makes sense. Like, that wasn't that hard. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like your product's helping heal people. Like, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to use real people to tell those stories. So that's another thing, like product-based people. That's awesome. Yeah.
So, question for Jay. From the outside looking in, kind of looks like an overnight success. We know there's no such thing as an overnight success, though. What I want to hear about is how you explain that or how you view that.
Yeah.
What did your quote-unquote overnight success really take?
Yeah. So I'm 31 now. I started studying the stuff I talk about today when I was 18. So my overnight success took 13 years or 10 years because it's been 3 years of growth and public profile and all the rest of it. So for me, my journey starts at 18. I meet the monk. I start studying the Vedas. I start getting fascinated with timeless wisdom. I start thinking about how does this relate to people's lives? And I'm like, I want to share everything I'm learning because it's so powerful. Everything I'm learning from these books and these monks, I'm like, I want to tell everyone about it. And I start going into how does this relate to the average kid living in London because that's where I was born and raised. How does this relate to the average kid in New York and LA and in the middle of America, wherever they are? Like, how does this relate to my generation? And so I used to give talks between 18 and 22 at universities. I had a society that I ran at university called Think Out Loud. And every week, 10 to 20 and then growing into 50 to 100 students would get together to hear me speak about philosophy, behavioral science, and psychology. And I would do these for free. So I made zero money. They'd come just to hear me speak about philosophy, science, behavioral science, and psychology. And so for me, I was literally like, I've been testing content for years. It's just that I took them online onto video 3 years ago. But I've sat with people's pain for longer than most people. I've sat and answered questions all night when I made no money from it, longer than most people. And I've spoken and sat with people for at least 3 hours a day for the last 13 years. So my experience of sitting with people, listening to their problems, trying to think of solutions, reading books, researching, getting them to experiment and test is 13 years long. It's just that I took it into video 3 years ago. I remember turning up to give talks at universities where 0 people showed up, and I would practice my speech to 4 walls as if it was packed, right? And so like now when I get to speak to like 10,000 audience or a 30,000 audience, like I still remember the day when no one turned up. So for me, the overnight success piece, I get it. Like it does look like that because the offline and online world are so separate. But online success is usually based off a ton of offline success or offline failure, right? And so I think that's what's missed in that journey element.
And like what a lot of like traditional, broadcast companies that I worked for, like they have like these huge teams. And they think you need like all this gear and all this equipment and like, a first AD. But then I went to go work for HuffPost and our crews were like so much smaller. So I was like, oh crap. Like, all right, how do I still make really good looking videos for social now that can still go viral and still to my to the quality that I'm used to? Like that's where we are right now with Ikon, is like really surrounding our team and like building a culture of young, hungry, passionate, talented people that, know what they're doing and are creative. And
So awesome.
yeah. It's cool.
I love it so
fun.
much. You got a gift for him,
We're
right?
getting gifts. I love gifts.
Getting gifts, yeah. So this is a copy of From Poop to
Oh
Gold.
my God, you actually
It-
wrote
it's-
it.
yeah.
That's so cool.
It's the
Oh
kind
my
of the
God, I
backstory
love
of our
that. That
campaigns
is
and
so
stuff,
cool.
and it focuses on kind of the 3 C's
That's fun.
of success for Harmon Brothers, which is creative culture, creative processes, and creative partnerships.
That is so
That's
cool.
cool.
I love that.
And there's also Unicorn Gold there for you, and
Right.
some towel spakes in there too, right?
I loved it.
But where
Awesome, thank you.
should our listeners find you? Like where's the main place to look you up? To
Yeah,
follow?
so you can find me on my podcast, On Purpose, Jay Shetty On Purpose. That's the #1 place I'd love for everyone to go. And if you're on Instagram, you can find me at Jay Shetty Instagram. If you're on Facebook, at Jay Shetty, and YouTube. So all 3.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if you just Google J Shetty Ikon Media, that would just go to the website.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like one
absolutely.
of the first things.
Yeah.
And if you want to find Alex's Instagram with nature photos,
yeah, it's just my name. It's just nature photos. It's great.
Okay, and any upcoming things that you want our listeners to know about or to be watching out for?
Oh, we can't share it.
We
yet.
can't
I
share
wish
it.
it was
There's a lot of
signed.
exciting
there's a
stuff.
lot of
We just
exciting-
we can't wait.
There's a few. Ikon Media is going to be working with a few very exciting brands and athletes coming up. So that's all I'm
Awesome.
going to say. That's,
Very
that's-
cool.
That's all I'm
Yeah.
going to say. So
I'm
fingers
excited about
crossed.
that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you. Love you
Alex,
guys.
for joining us. It's been a
Yeah.
blast. Love hearing your backstory. And thank you guys for listening. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. And we'll see you on the next one.